Welcome, Wargamers, to the desperate rebirths of the mortal realms. Today we are talking about Dawnbringers, Hounds of Chaos, Book 6, and Part 2 of my coverage on it. Now, we left off yesterday's story with the city of Verdigris almost falling. Abraxia had formed a horizon-darkening warband of various chaos tribes, and at the moment of her charge was interrupted by Balthanos and his Kurnothi hunt. With her siege foiled, Abraxia was injured, and basically this curse was messing up her mind, her senses, and distracting her constantly, but she's pushing through, and it all ended with an ominous deal with Archaon. I won't get you Verdigris, but I can do you one better. And today we're going to find out exactly what that plan is, and uncover a whole bunch of inner tension amongst the forces of order as everyone becomes a little bit more dubious of the pointy ears. Now, one thing I'd like to add up top before we jump into things, Games Workshop has been kind enough to take a chance on me and give me an affiliate link to their Warhammer merch store. If you'd like to tell GW that you appreciate the channel, the things I do, please consider using that link in my link tree down below. Every time you do, a portion of the sales go directly to supporting me, my wife, our cats, and I could not be more thankful for each and every one of you. And thank you to Games Workshop for taking a chance. So, the city of Verdigris is safe. They had dark clouds all over that seemed to break apart once the forces of chaos were pushed away. Oddly enough, and this point really isn't brought back, Commander Thorian collapses at the end of this, and it might just be from a sense of exhaustion. This makes, I think, the 5th time she's collapsed in this book series, but whatever. ABF, always be fainting. But the question remains, where is Abraxia headed? The only clue she got from Archaon was that she needed fire from the liar gods. Unclear if it's a riddle or what. But, seeming to understand it, Abraxia unveils her pitch. I call it a pitch because his orders are still to take Verdigris, so you need to sway him for not killing you for failing. So again, that's the idea. She's trying to save her own life. There exists a place not far in Giran, another city of Sigmar that's been a thorn in Archaon's side, one that is actually renowned as a holy site for its constantly blazing fire of an altar. That is to say, the fire of the liar gods, perhaps. Where is this place? The city of Phoenicium. Now, friends, I had to put the book down. This is a trip, okay? Because they have not really developed the lore of this place in a meaningfully way, since they introduced it, but it's such a fascinating idea for a city. And so let's pivot and talk about Phoenicium and why it matters. In the Age of Myth, this place was already a megalopolis. We talked about the Age of Myth in other videos. It was the height of technology and arcane science, like everyone else back then. But then the Age of Chaos came, and the Chaos forces were having trouble breaking the defenses of the city. So instead, the Chaos army breaks open the mountain behind them. And this is where things get kind of wiggity and AOSified. You see, the mountain that Phoenicium was built into, as it is the realm of life, is one of many mountains that contains a ton of sap. Essentially, the forest above it kind of trickles the sap down, and these mountains and hills become like big bubbles of it. You wouldn't normally know it because it doesn't normally matter. But whenever Chaos forces did whatever they did to rupture the mountain, the sap poured out and rolled over this entire city. This is the equivalent of blowing a dam to destroy a riverside city. The sap rolls down the hill over the city like a silent avalanche. Now, fun fact for everybody, in the year 1919 here in our real world in Boston, there was a molasses factory that collapsed, and the area had what's known as the Great Boston Molasses Flood. And that is probably the closest thing that I can equate Phoenicium to. In Boston, it was jarring because with the amount of inertia it had behind it, molasses rolled over this area like a tidal wave. Right? It moves like water, but remember, it has the weight and density of an almost solid, and so it's tearing cars off the street, it's ripping at buildings. One person said that it was like getting hit by a concrete wall, and legit, a portion of Boston was sealed in molasses. People died. It was weird and tragic. But now imagine that same idea with tree sap. It rolls over the entire city and literally locks it in amber. One of the things that was in the city, locked in amber during the Age of Myth, is a temple that was built to honor the god beast, the Phoenix. It's a massive tower of a phoenix with a pyre of flame at its base. And this is an arcane flame, of course, the only place outside of Hysh to honor the god beast with an element of its power. Well, since the Age of Sigmar, elves have flocked here immediately. We mentioned in the Cities of Sigmar series that we did, that during the Age of Chaos, the forces in Azir were planning, how are we going to take back the realms, right? How can we work together to make that happen? And part of this city is just that. The elves wanted this place of worship ASAP. It was one of the first cities ever founded. In return, they'd offer their services of the Phoenix Guard to other factions, which is why any city of Sigmar can take the Phoenix Guard thematically, and the city was taken. Elven magics were used to begin excavation of portions of the city. Basically, they have to melt down the amber and kind of slide it away, and then they can rebuild what's already there. And they have now refortified this into a place and returned it to glory, and at its heart is still the Temple of the Phoenix. Now, in the city at the time of our story, coming back to our events of the Dawnbringer Crusade here, all of those things are still true, but what was once a totally unified bastion of order is beginning to fray. And I think this has more to do with telling us what's going around the rest of the realms than specifically this city. And we have to remember what the average Empire citizen thinks about on a daily basis. They are seeing the fall of cities like Anvilgard, or the reallocating to Marathi, as a pseudo-racial line in the sand. Right? This is a place of the elves. And cities like Phoenicium are put in a really weird headspace because just like Anvilgard, they also have an inordinate proportion of elves. Even though the elves in Anvilgard were more historically aligned with dark elves, and these elves are more historically aligned with high elves, it doesn't really matter. Are these guys going to secede too? The elf gods have their own priorities. Why not? Things don't really improve as Phoenicium had just sent out a great crusade of its own. And so, only to fill those vacant spaces in their society are more elves. The Phoenix Guard are expanded, their authority now extends to civil matters as well as military, and a huge contingent of Lumineth realm lords enters the city. Again, no context for this makes this all seem very dubious. And while the city folk are thinking about all this, the skies begin to go black. The hellish army that was once at Verdigris is now on the doorstep of Phoenicium. Archaon, he liked the pitch. Abraxia is going to take the city, she's going to go to the pyre of the Phoenix and cure her curse, and finally destroy one of the seeds of hope. Now, taking the city head-on is suicide, because there's a reason it hasn't fallen yet. But Abraxia has a bold plan. Archaon is going to use his wizards and gaunt summoners to make pacts with demons of chaos, specifically ones that consume magic. An example of these, one variant might be the Screamers of Tzeentch. Basically anything that wants to attack the ether. If we're attacking an elven city or elven heavy populous city, there is sure to be arcane magics at us. We want someone who is eager to get into that fight. And they essentially pull the Stormcast Eternal trick of descending from the skies. Abraxia and her men go into a summoned portal, part of, Archaon's plan. And the other end of the portal immediately dumps them above the city of Phoenix Guard, riding a tide of magic down. Essentially, imagine just horses running downward at a city on trails of fire. Honestly, this seems like a unique thing. I'm not sure if we'll see it again, but yeah. If you're on the ground in Phoenicium, a storm rolls in, and then an army of chaos pours out from overhead. The Lumineth Realm Lords who were there in the city are of the Windmaster sect, and so they fly up to meet the Chaos Army in the sky. And so begins one of the most anime-level fights ever, right? Flying knights charging at each other, Windmasters throwing energy around, there's lightning, magic everywhere, demons. As they're dying on both sides, bodies are just kind of flying to the ground, splatting around. Abraxia descends on the city, and they kind of have to approach it, even though they're coming from the sky, they have to approach it carefully. If you run directly at the temple, you get zapped by magic and die. Like there was a barrier around it or something like that. And so her plan is, instead of going straight for the temple, we're going to work our way there by going through the city streets, jungle warfare style, and just cause hell. When the Phoenix Guards present themselves, we kill them. The more Phoenix Guard you kill, it chips away at that protection. Their magic is more communal, like they kind of pull it together to make this defense network. So you essentially bleed it dry is her plan. Just go into the alleyways, the streets, pick fights, and when you meet resistance, crush it. They do just that, and eventually their way is opened directly to the Temple of the Phoenix. Now at this point in our story, Abraxia has just about lost her mind. Because of her curse, all the things going around in her head, she can't really tell friend from foe, but she just keeps throwing herself forward. Like, she has enough insight in herself to be like, I need to get to the fire. I know I have to get here. What for? Maybe hazy. And her vision goes between seeing people as regal knights to horrific bone constructs, all kinds of weird stuff. She's having a time. And she presses ahead of her army to get there faster. Eventually, she barges into the Chamber of Flame, and the only thing in there is a single elf, who had essentially mantled the power and took it into himself. I should note here, there is a sidebar, a kind of a side plot in a sidebar to the narrative going on here about the Lumineth Rumlord's twins, Alania and Elithor. They were there when the Lumineth contingent arrived, and they make it out of the city with an ember of the flames. And they have a great discussion about like, oh, the Phoenix will rise again from these ashes, specifically the ashes they're holding. So like, it's not the end of the road for Phoenix Guard in general. It's just, I wanted to throw that out there, that there is a plot that keeps them in play. The rest of the flames of the Phoenix were channeled into this dude, who Abraxia is now staring at. And what commences here is a true Dark Souls fight, right? The Phoenix Lord is consumed in blue flame. He takes on the form of a giant blue phoenix, wreathed in fire, lashes out in waves of like just energy that are coming and just knocking Abraxia always till Sunday. And it's interesting because the book describes him and this ascension as beautiful and heavenly, but Abraxia is so out of it, she sees him as like a flesh golem rather than a dignified arcane bird. Still, after an awesome fight scene, she lands her spear into the belly of the beast, and the Lord tumbles to the ground below. Seeing that the fire is now inside the man, Abraxia begins to eat him while he is still alive, and the scene ends with the last true defenders at the heart of Phoenicium falling as their lord is screaming in horror and agony. Fade to black. Let's talk about why is this cool. I do this at the end of all my videos. Phoenicium sounds like a great place to dungeon dive, and I don't know why they never used it more as a location for things. The idea that the city is locked in amber, literally, makes it highly interesting to me. It just seems like it's made for dungeon diving games, and I was just like, I don't want you to destroy it. I kind of wanted you guys to use it for something, but all right, I'll take it too, I guess. Abraxia is a really cool character. I appreciated her introduction. One thing I will say, though, is I was just very disappointed that in the final book of the Dawnbringer campaign series, we didn't really have anything to do with the cities that were founded. We finally got here, and what could have been an epic stand ended up just kind of being a distraction, almost like Abraxia was gonna deliver the final punch to Verdigris and then just punched a random bystander instead. I'm gonna say it here now, going to do a post-mortem video where I kind of give my thoughts on the series as well as rewrites that I would do that maintain the product line of what was released. But to my point being here, like I'm glad they did something with the city. I just wish they did more before they destroyed it. The Phoenix Lord fight scene was awesome. It was true anime boss level, and it was very exciting to see like Abraxia losing her mind while trying to achieve a mission. It was cool. Again, all thumbs up for her. It was more just like, but why in this book, right? Why not give her own book or more of like a introductory campaign series with the new edition rather than having her close out the old one? I just didn't get it. Regardless, we're going to keep our coverage of the Dawnbringers Part 6 book going in my next video, tackling the start of the Aqshy Crusade. I hope that you will join me for that. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and I will catch you next time. Happy wargaming, friends!